In this refresh episode, adding another Wavemaker to San Quentin. But what's going on with those leaves? Let's dump some mass biomedia in the sump. Poor Sylvia, my Salvini, who's a mere shadow of her old beautiful self. And Buck, my true Parrot Cichlid, is getting a little buddy, thanks to me. I love my Wavemakers, and I use them whenever I can. When I set up San Quentin, my 435-gallon American Cichlid tank, I actually had 2 Wavemakers in it, like I do in Alcatraz over here, but I ended up removing one, and I'll tell you why I did that, and also why they're so important for your tanks. Just in case you don't know, Wavemakers are great for a few reasons. If you have aggressive fish and they can handle some current, then Wavemakers blow them around a little bit, and it provides somewhat of a distraction to them. Always fighting against the flow moving through the tank. Better to fight the flow than to fight each other, right? So they also provide good surface agitation if used right. I place one towards the top of the tank, pointed up a tad bit to make sure that it's breaking up the surface. Without surface agitation in your tank, the fish will all suffocate and die because that's where the gas exchange happens. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. You can do this with bubblers and filter returns as well, but even then I still like having a Wavemaker whenever possible as a backup for surface agitation. That way if one of them goes down, you still have that thing pointing upward. Now if you also put a Wavemaker on the opposite side down toward the bottom of the tank pointing back, then you enhance this current, this water loop that's going from the top all the way back towards the bottom on the other side, and that helps keep the sand nice and clean as it pushes the detritus back towards the filter intakes. That's what this tank is missing. I had a lower Wavemaker in here at first, like I said, but it was way too much at the time for my Americans, and they were just getting blown around because they were too small. And also my fake leaves from Aqua Decor were just getting blown all to the other side of the tank. So I'm going to be adding a lower Wavemaker again now that the fish are bigger and they'll be able to handle the current more, but those leaves are still going to get blown all over to the right side of the tank, so I'll have to deal with that first. And it's easier to do that before the current starts blasting them. So I'll just take some of the leaves and weigh them down. It won't look quite as natural with each leaf having something on it to keep it in place, but that's the price I have to pay. Life as a fish keeper is hard, always making sacrifices. Alright, well let's see how this works out. Now adding the Wavemaker. I'm pretty hooked on Uniclife Wavemakers. They're not that expensive, ranging from about $60 to $75. They're adjustable, so you don't have to put them all at full blast all day long. And full blast is really way too powerful for me. Even on this big 10-foot long tank, I don't have it at full blast. You can also put them on day and night mode, so it automatically slows down when it gets dark. You just put the little controller on the wall here where it can sense the amount of light in the room, and then it does all the work for you. Alright, time to turn this baby on, and let's see if we notice any difference along the bottom. I haven't gravel vacked in quite some time, so it might get cloudy. Well, there it is. Water isn't getting as cloudy as I thought it would, so that's cool. But it is still cloudy, and I have a lot of particulate floating around, mostly from when I disturbed those leaves. That will settle down in just a little bit. I have noticed though that if I turn it up enough to get all the way over to the other side of the tank like this, I think it's a bit too much current for the inmates. See how they're all huddled together as far away from the Wavemaker as they can get? So I'll probably just run it a few hours a day on a schedule with a smart plug, and that should do it. And I'll probably still need a gravel vac, but I shouldn't have to do it as extensively or as frequently as I would otherwise. Much better. And maybe Kevin, the Blue Texas, will lay off the smaller fish with a little extra current in the tank every now and again, but that's unlikely.
Subscribe or someone dies. Ding ding.
One of the main benefits of having a sump is that you have all this extra space to put biomedia in it. And to tell you the truth, the sump underneath San Quentin over here, I'm not really using that space very effectively. So why don't we fix that? I have these huge mesh baggies just for this reason. I just haven't used them yet, so I'll add some media in there and dump it in. I do think there tends to be an overemphasis on how much biomedia you need in a tank. I mean, I've hardly had any at all in an HOB filter before, and then I had tons in my FX6 canister filters. And either way, I don't ever seem to have a problem. and I've usually had very clear water with no ammonia problems in my tanks. Biomedia is great, but when you have a seasoned tank, beneficial bacteria is on every surface in your tank and in your filter. It's in the sand, on the glass, on your decor, and everywhere except the water column. Yeah, water doesn't have enough beneficial bacteria in it to matter at all. But there is beneficial bacteria all over the tank, and I think that's usually sufficient. So I'm adding more biomedia, but I don't really think it's necessary at all. And a good way to find out is to always watch your fish and make sure that they seem healthy, and check your water for ammonia if you ever have concerns. You know what sucks? When you have a beautiful fish, just stunning colors, and then all of a sudden it starts rooming with a psychopath named Kevin. And all those colors just wash away, and you're left with a fish that's just like a shadow of what it once was. Sylvia, Sylvia, Sylvia. What has become of you, my dear? She's a 5-inch Salvini Cichlid, whom I adore. She's been the defender of the weak, my righteous avenger, against Kevin, the blue Texas I was talking about behind his back earlier. He was afraid of her, but now that he's gotten so big, he's not so afraid, and he actually chases her around, and she's afraid. But look, she used to be gorgeous with brilliant yellow, a dark black stripe, a nice red belly. I love that, and she was so proud and nothing got to her. She was the queen of the tank, but now she looks more like a DCU version of herself with muted tones on almost grayscale, like Zack Snyder got a hold of her. Well, she isn't so happy anymore and just seems a mere shadow of herself. You've probably experienced that with your own fish at some point, where a fish is feeling bullied and then just tries to blend in and hide in the shadows. She's often over in the upper right corner, almost invisible, which is a total bummer. And when Kevin starts in, she'll zoom all over the tank. But look again at how she used to look. Pretty fish, right? So what do I do? Like I said in another refresh video, I might try adding some small branches along the bottom of the tank to provide more cover and hiding places. Another option I really don't want to have to do is to get rid of Kevin. Send him to an even higher security prison somewhere, higher security than San Quentin. But he's so beautiful, and really the only issue right now is between him and Sylvia. And I understand he's probably still really enjoying the freedom to be an ass to her now that she's finally afraid of him, so maybe he'll tone down as time passes. But I can hear you experienced cichlid fish keepers already saying he's not going to calm down, bro. He's just going to get worse, much worse as he matures. So I'll give it some more time, but if it comes down to having a grayscale Sylvia and a gorgeous blue Texas, or just having a beautiful Sylvia and no blue Texas, then I'm going with the latter of those two options. Sylvia's the queen of this tank, and I'll make sure she gets back into power, somehow. So I have this true parrot, who's one of the coolest fish that I've ever had. You've probably noticed him because he's been in the video so far. He's one of the inmates of San Quentin. And just recently, I got another fish that's going to be just like a little mini-me for him in San Quentin. The true parrot has been on my list for this tank since long before I had it. I was trying to make a list of American cichlids to start off with, and the true parrot was on that list from the very beginning. I think the first time I'd seen one was when I saw that the Cichlid Bros had one, and I just fell in love with him immediately. Theirs didn't make it, and I don't think they ever replaced him. Well, I ordered 2 of them from Predatory Fins, but it turned out they only had 1, so that's what I got. Well, that's alright, because at least I have 1, right? And they were over $70 each, so that saved a little cash. But when he arrived, he was very timid about eating, and he had a bit of a sunken belly. I didn't have enough room for another quarantine tank at the time, so I just took the risk and put him directly in my 180-gallon American cichlid tank. Well, when I noticed he wasn't eating and he had a bit of a sunken belly, I was afraid that he had parasites, so I took him out and I made room for another quarantine tank, treating him for the parasites. Anyway, I don't know if he had a disease, but he started eating better, and he lost the sunken belly. Now he's a great eater, but he's a really slow eater and a challenge to feed. Trying to make sure he gets some before all the other Zoomers pick it up is pretty tough. So anyway, I found some more true parrots in my local fish store recently, and I picked up one of them. And guess what? Only 20 bucks. But when I added him to my 55-gallon quarantine grow-out tank, I noticed some of the same shyness and reluctance to eat as Buck used to have. I dropped my tasty Northfin pellets in the tank, and he wouldn't even act interested. I mean, he wouldn't even taste them. I figured he'd eventually get hungry enough and start eating the pellets, but after a week, nope. So I started to try a different kind of food, Northfin krill flakes, and now just look at him go. He absolutely loves this stuff. Just not a pellet guy, I suppose. So now I'm waiting for him to put on some size and gain some confidence so he can become an inmate of San Quentin. I'm not sure how long that'll be, but I want to be pretty sure he'll be fine because, if I'm being honest, once a fish goes into San Quentin, unless he's an absolute terror like I'm hoping Kevin won't be, they're staying in there. This tank is way too big and loaded full of decor, and I'm not ready to spend all day removing that decor and draining over half the tank trying to catch a smaller fish because he's not fitting in well and getting chased too much. So I'm playing it as safely as I can. But just imagine having 2 of these gorgeous and personable fish at about 14 inches swimming around in here. It's gonna be sweet. And speaking of sweet, you've made it to the end of this video, which I'm sure wasn't easy. So until next time, peace out.